All right. Looks like we are live on YouTube. The time is 9:08. We're still waiting for Tyler here, but we do have Trustee Fraser and Trustee Harper in attendance for our Finance Committee meeting on September 18th. And we'll start the meeting. Our first item of business is sales tax. So we received our July sales tax, which is published in your packet. It was the highest on record right now. And that, let's see, did you guys have any comments? I mean, we're $56,000 over last year so far. Well, about 56,000 if you round. Comment, questions, concerns?
Oh, I love sales tax.
I was just gonna say it's pretty self-explanatory. Pretty good.
Okay.
Good stuff happening.
Excellent.
I think one comment to make just for the public record is that I know there's lots of conversation around kind of how much does online sales tax contribute to this? How much does inflation? I feel pretty comfortable saying that there has been growth in our local economy. Now, granted, that does not speak to the experience of any local business. So I have said that in every chamber meeting, in multiple meetings. Obviously, individual businesses have very different factors that contribute to growth or loss in a given year. But I think there are a couple of data points that we can use to specify or support why our overall local economy has grown. And that is, first of all, I don't think online sales tax or inflation can explain the overall increase we've seen. It certainly is a factor for sure. And that's the case probably throughout lots of communities with online shopping increasing and the collection of online sales tax. But I don't think it explains the full increase in revenue. I think the second piece is that we have other data that supports an increase in visitation in the area. Again, those visitors don't necessarily translate to sales dollars for every business, but the Four Corners region as a whole is seeing an increase in tourism and visitation. We're seeing those numbers from the state, whether it's from cell phone data or just the state, simply the state tourism board saying, hey, you guys are seeing a lot of visitors, how can we help support you? And so I think it is fair to say that these numbers support that our local economy is also growing, but that doesn't reflect the individual reality of any business. So I think just having that dual recognition of nuance when we're talking about this with our community members, that we can say that our local economy is growing based on a variety of data points, but again, it doesn't necessarily reflect the reality for any individual business. And that's why I think the Chamber of Commerce and San Juan Development Association are interested in looking for ways for how they can support local businesses in capturing some of these growths in tourism and area. So that's my spiel.
Welcome, Tyler. We were just discussing our latest and greatest sales tax numbers.
Okay, sorry I'm late.
You feeling better?
Yeah, I'm coming around. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments on sales? Good. All right. Now to dive into our budget. So apologies for the massive spreadsheet I gave you all. This is kind of a showcase of how disorganized our budget is. If you look through all the line items, we've had these, we just collect line items. We're really good at that. And I don't think we've ever gone through and actually deleted any. So when it prints out like this, you just see a ton of zeros and stuff that we haven't budgeted for in probably decades. So that's one of our projects right now, is cleaning that up. And so trying to clean that up while facilitating the new 2024 budget is going to be a little bit challenging, but we'll get through it. I think the best thing to look at is the the spreadsheet on the very last page of your packet kind of shows general, general increases or decreases from the previous year. That's a good one to kind of start on. What I did right now is I built out my personnel budget first for 2024. And then from there, looking at, like supplemental projects. So as you can see, we're pushing here. I'm going to share my screen here. So really trying to build that capacity that we've been talking about with our personnel. And as you'll see, it really decreases the amount we're able to spend on actual projects. And so this is like my ideal world with all the personnel wishes in there. And then we're gonna have to make some compromises on the projects moving forward and what that might look like. So working on sharing my screen and talking at the same time. There we go. Okay. So I'm gonna share with you guys our budgeting software here, cleared up on my view of it. And we can go through this. I did put in a memo in there with like kind of broken out policy discussions, and that's something that I would like to talk to you all first before we go into our work session next Monday with the whole board on kind of helping narrow down those talking points a little, or those policy discussions a little bit if we can. And then looking at our overall budget and kind of talking through some of the revenues and expenditures on how they might look next year. In planning for next year, I do want to keep in mind that we are going to be implementing several grants next year, including the Brownfield grant, the code rewrite grant, a potential housing grant that we're working on right now. And so projects on top of that might be straining for staff at the, just as far as capacity. Those are huge projects, and the wastewater treatment plant collection system, because we'll know about that in October. What I gave to you all is all general fund budget stuff. I haven't had time to dive into the sewer, wastewater, the sewer, the water, the refuse, and the other funds at this point. So we're focused right now on the general fund, and we'll be focused on that in our work session on Monday as well. So I would love to start with talking through these. Well, I'm going to leave it up to you guys, but my idea was to start with talking through these budget or these policy decisions on budget, unless you'd like me to walk you through the actual budget first, and then you can go back to that list. So kind of giving you guys a choice on how you want your information presented at this time.
I think for me, I just had a couple of questions. I thought this spreadsheet you were talking about was really helpful. This is the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah, the one in the very last page of the
page. I just had a couple, the staff stuff, all that was clear. When we're talking about grant expenditures, that's matching funds, or that's like.
That's actually spending the money that we've been awarded.
From the grants, okay.
So like, we have $300,000 budgeted to spend out of the Brownfield project. We have, I think 40 something thousand to spend from our IHOA grant.
Yeah.
And that's why those numbers are so much more than this year, because we're actually spending the funds.
Next year, yeah.
And also that does include grant matches. So there are subline items that would say we committed $229,000 for the Blair Street project. So that grant match is in there. And then there's a grant match in there for $100,000 on unanticipated grants that we might want to apply for.
Okay, gotcha. Then for, let's see. I was curious what was under Kendall Mountain Ski Area with the budget increase and what you're thinking there.
Sure. So last year, the $175,000 that was supposed to be budgeted under the ski area somehow got into other buildings. There's one that says it's decreased quite a bit, and then there's one that says it increased quite a bit.
I think it was park maintenance.
Right, it was in park maintenance. Well, park maintenance also had Columbine Park,
That's what I was
so we reduced that.
Yeah.
And then I think it was under like transfers or other buildings or something. I don't know how it got in that realm, but I had to take it out from there and put it into, Kendall Mountain Ski Area, and that's why it's.
So
That-
those
that
are monies that were always intended for Kendall Mountain facilities.
Correct. So we
Operations.
budgeted for $175,000 to spend this year on the deck. And the patio area. We're not gonna be able to spend that this year. We'll have to wait until next year, even though we do have a contract awarded. They're not able to get to it.
Okay. That making I had a question on what change was, so just understanding what's going there. And planning. Obviously it has gone up a lot. And again, that's just because of like what we're seeing as far as CPS review, potential changes in staffing for planning, right?
So that is so we put in the housing coordinator as a full-time position there. While that is fully grant funded, we did anticipate the benefits for that.
Mhm.
So that's one of the areas of the increase there, as well as promoting our community development coordinator to community development director. And that is partially paid for by the Brownsfield grant. So I separated out the Brownsfield grant for the next 3 years, and $8,000 a year would be going towards that position. And then I do want to recognize all the work that Lucy's been putting in, as well as this unfortunate situation where we hired a housing coordinator with grant funds that is making more than Lucy at this time. So thinking about how to make that fair and equitable, and recognizing that I am very confident that she can take over our planning. Well, I don't want to call it planning department anymore, because it's more of a community development department. So like, she will be facilitating those planning applications and taking them over when she can, but we would still be using CPS in that as well. And then she'll also be doing bigger projects like streetscapes, like thinking about Blair Street projects we've been working on, thinking about more EV stuff coming in, taking over perimeter trails, planning and stuff like that.
Okay, got you, kind of more town-wide.
Yeah, thinking more of it like a community development department rather than just a planning department. And that's what a lot of communities have gone to in the last couple of years, is more of this, like, let's look at this more as a big picture and how it all fits in, rather than just saying, okay, we approved your application. Next.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Okay, great, that's helpful clarification before we get into policy stuff, thank you.
Mhm. And then there was a big decrease on the partners organizations. I haven't gotten all of that, those requests in yet. So thinking about, if we get a request from the creative district, and, I think I listed out our partners that I had identified,
Yeah,
on that memo. So that I haven't received those requests yet. The fire and the, sheriff line items there haven't changed from last year yet either. So we should anticipate increases in those areas.
okay, I am happy if you want to proceed with the policy decision, I just had a couple of clarifications.
Sure. Tyler, Jim, do you need any clarifications on those?
No,
Okay.
we're good.
Okay. So one thing we were looking at, so I'll start just kind of ticking off through this memo, is how to facilitate NEC parks in the visitor center moving forward. What do we do with the visitor center? What do we do with kind of how we're greeting our guests? Do we want to keep that open full time? Do we want to change locations? Do we want to keep both open? Do we want to keep our contract with the chamber the same? And then do we also, I had budgeted potentially for an NEC Park summer attendant that would work during the summer. But I really wanted to open that up on a larger discussion on thinking about how we interact with the chamber. And Deanna and I do have a meeting this afternoon. We were going to talk through some of these issues, but kind of wanted to prep you on our discussions on Monday as we look into all these contracts that we have, and the chamber is one contract that look at, and especially now that our services are changing. Another issue in this area is cleaning. So currently, our current contracted cleaner does not want to add on the NEC Park. So I would honestly suggest going out for an RFP so that we could get a comprehensive cleaning service for every facility. So I don't expect any answers to these questions right now, but just kind of prepping you for Monday's discussion. And if you think there's a way we can, like, if I need to narrow this down, or, I mean, honestly, each one of these could be its own work session.
Yeah.
And I know that you all don't have time for that, so I'm trying to figure out if we need to narrow it down. If you think that's more in my realm to kind of give you guys a recommendation moving forward, or if you wanted to see chamber contract or what that looks like. I'm open to any kind of suggestions or ways to make this list a little smaller, so you guys don't have a giant meeting coming, or series of lots of meetings coming up.
I think for me, I'd be curious to see, based on your meeting with Deanne, like usage of our current visitor center, and it's almost like we need a test case of a summer to see what kind of staffing level might be needed. And so I'm a little curious if we could, you know, either fund something for a year, or are there options where a position like this could be partly supported by the tourism board? Like, could we request that for the future? I know their budgeting request season is over. But just think about how to budget for this, not directly out of general funds. But I kind of feel like I need a little bit more information as far as volume that the visitor center is handling. And we kind of don't know what we need in the NEC Park yet, I feel like. Or if there's options to talk about, you know, San Juan Mountain Association or other groups that were staffing some information areas, like could we do some sort of partnership or option instead of it being solely town funded?
These are great suggestions. Okay. I think so those are great suggestions. I've written those down and I can kind of jump off with those, but I appreciate, just any kind of comments around these, so I can get a feel for where you guys are headed. And I can ask those questions to Deanne as well.
And she might have ideas. I know she talked to regional partners, you know, there might be some ideas.
Great. The next one that was brought up at our retreat was the bump out program continuation. If we did continue it, I would advocate for charging a fee. But wanted to get a general kind of sense on, if this is something we want to talk about in our, because that would be a revenue generator if we wanted to do that, but also I think it would just basically cover the cost of labor for it. And then we have found that the more barricades we use, the less we have for events. So it is a program that I think deserves a little bit of thought if we wanted it to keep moving forward. I know some municipalities have taken away the bump out program because it's no longer COVID. Now, I know we're getting cases potentially again, so I don't know what that looks like for our future, but just kind of wanted to get some thoughts around this program. Or if you feel like this is more something for the parks or the personnel and ordinance committee, you can meet with that committee as well. And I plan on doing that the first week in October. Well, that's fair if you guys don't
I
have
mean,
comments.
if we I mean, and if we charge for it, like what does that look like? How much revenue is that actually going to make for us? Or is that just going to cover our costs?
That would just cover costs of labor.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, that it seems like it's a lot of work for just covering the cost. But if we do have an uptick in COVID again, then I don't know. It's really tough to say. I don't know. I don't have a very good I haven't taken the community temperature on this issue that well, I don't feel like.
Yeah, I agree with Tyler. I think I just wondered, like, administratively, if having a fee, is it worth our time? How burdensome is it? Or burdensome for business owners? Again, the fee probably would not be exorbitant, but just administratively for everybody, what's that cost? And then I'm curious, I don't know, Jim, if you think from the chamber perspective, like, again, I don't really know from business owners and restaurants, like, do people value having this extra space? Is it worth the effort? Like, what do we hear? So it's hard for me to speak to kind of how big of a benefit this is to business owners and the town. So I don't know if we want to facilitate some sort of conversation at the chamber level, Dan sends out an email, or if we just kind of want to facilitate this through personnel ordinance. I prefer for the conversation to kind of happen at the personnel ordinance, because to me it seems a little bit more. It seems more related to like how we want to manage our streets and our sidewalks and our storefront, business fronts, as opposed to financing of it.
I agree with you. And then to directly answer your question, I think you'll hear pros and cons on both sides of the argument. What neighboring communities are doing are charging for the space, the square footage, and then also charging property tax on top of that. Because the fact of the matter is, we've been doubling space for businesses, essentially increasing revenue, which is what we've seen because these storefronts have been doubled in square footage, and property tax has not increased, although the footprint of that establishment has. Like I said, neighboring communities are doing just that, paying for the service and then also charging for the square footage. Just a thought. Like I said, there's pros and cons on both sides of the issue.
Right, and if folks knew that that was going to be the new fee structure, that they would be like, well, that's not worth it to us. You know, I think it'd be variable depending on the business as far as whether they want to pay for that space or not. So.
Well, it sounds like I'll take this to the personnel and ordinance committee, but I did want to get you guys' eyes on it. Just thinking about it from a finance perspective.
And I do believe that we, and nothing I haven't said publicly before, tighten up. If this does continue, we need to tighten up the rules and regulations and how these things are managed.
Yeah, and that's too why I'm starting this conversation now. So it doesn't hit us blindsided when we come into May and we go, the bump out program, we need to do something to help facilitate that.
Yeah, and it should be fair. Obviously, if some folks have larger space, that should be very, I mean, again, there should be probably a more thought out policy around this if it continues than our kind of response with COVID, which has just been like, yes, let's do this. So I think it warrants a more substantive policy if it merits continuing. That's my opinion.
I'm not gonna lie, I have a difficult time with that one because I see it as like a service that we are providing and they're then making money off of that service and we're going in the hole, right? So it's really, not really beneficial right now. Fire departments. I met with Gilbert last week. A lot of the requests will be the same, but he's requested payments to be split to the Friends of the Fire Department and the authority. Since the trustees had given him that extra 40,000, I think it was, last year, was it last year that we did that? It was just last year. that bumped them into a new criteria where they're now required to do audits. And that's something that they weren't anticipating with this increase in funds that they received. So he had requested that part of that be put to the Friends of the Fire Department so that it doesn't go into their general operating and doesn't bump them into that next category, so they have to receive these audits.
Is Friends of the Fire Department a 501c3
Yes,
housed within or related to the fire department?
yes. And I think prior, all of the funds that that they received directly for the fireworks had gone into that fund. But now it all goes into their general fund, which then increases like how much they have to spend for an auditor. So you will be approaching the board asking for that, but wanting to run that by you all first.
What's the threshold for the amount before they needed the audit?
You know, I don't know the exact threshold, you didn't tell me,
Okay.
but I can ask that.
Yeah, okay. And it's because it's town funding and or government funding that they have to undertake that audit?
Yeah, it's because it's more than a certain amount, so they would have to then get that audit. Whereas before we would pay them, I think, a lesser amount and then supplement the fireworks on top of that to the Friends of the Library or Friends of the Fire Department. And now it's all going into their general account, which increases the amount they have to get audited, so.
Does it
Okay.
put them in a bracket where they need an audit in general, or like the total amount they have to have audited is changed? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
how this funding, an audit, is it required?
I am sure they're still getting audited, but I think this puts them into the next category, which when they have to pay for an audit, it's a
It's
lot
more
more.
expensive
Yeah.
and having more time. Yeah.
So that's something too, I'll be discussing with our accountant to see if that's possible on our end too, to be able to do that. But wanted to judge your all's kind of comfort level with doing that. Because in essence, then it is really paying for those fireworks and not different, or not just putting it as one.
Right.
Well, and if it's just being used to pay for that and we've done it that way previously, I think that's fine. If it was just an increase and it seemed like we were just helping them avoid an audit by splitting money, I think that would be a problem. But if it is just to pay for the firework product and we've done it like that, then that seems perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, I agree with Tyler. I think the point I made on this issue previously was that the overall budget request from the fire authority had gone up. And my overall just request to them was, I'm happy to fund this budget request and you can spend it how you like. But I would be reticent to fund additional operational costs on top of the funding request for the firework product. So I think, like, again, if they're prioritizing for the community and to the town board, hey, we'd like to spend this amount on the fireworks and we'd like it to go in this account. And that seems reasonable, and we can do that accounting wise, according to our accountant. I don't have a problem with that, but again, I'm reluctant to see additional growth in the budget that we would be funding to their general fund. And so again, I would just expect a budget that looks like some overall stable amount being requested. So for example, if they needed more for training or equipment this year, and we're taking some out of the firework fund, then that would play up differently for which money we put there. I don't know if that's clear, but.
Again, I don't expect full answers for each of these. I just want to make sure I can kind of nail them down a little bit more for our discussions on Monday. Let me go to the bathroom trailer. So we have to remove the bathroom trailer from Janice's property by October 31st. Unless we ask if she can keep it there for the winter, but that was in our contract with her. We will not be meeting them next year. They have proven to be very difficult to set up and take down, not the portable bathroom trailers that we had kind of thought they were at first. It takes, I think it took about almost 2 full weeks to set that bathroom trailer up. And then with the damage that occurred this winter, that set us up for about a 3-week setup for that. So it's gonna take us probably at least a week to tear it all down. And then what to do with it next. There's an option of selling it back to the manufacturer. I haven't gotten a quote for that, but I think it's somewhere around 20,000 that we would get back from that. Or if you wanted to keep it in town, thinking about, and I know this might be a conflict, but talking to Mr. Harper about potentially, you know, if you wanted to use it over at his food truck area at Harmony Park. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there. And this is a nice asset for the town, but I don't see us kind of just hanging on to it as something that we would use at events as we initially thought. We would need to get a tank in it if that was the case, and then pay for pumping of that tank out, or connecting it to a tap is a lot harder than we had anticipated.
Right now it's connected to a tap.
It is, yeah.
So it's just not as portable as we had initially thought it was.
Correct. It's actually very difficult to
Yeah.
move again.
What about, is there any potential, I mean, I do see it as a useful asset potentially, and so thinking about like the perimeter trail that we're talking about. Or things like that, where the previous trails plans we talked about bathrooms, is there any benefit to keeping it on hand for a couple of years for something like that, that it could get put at a trailhead or over by the river walk, or is that something we want to consider?
I think we want to keep it in use, because I don't think it's, it's historical. So I think after it's sitting all winter, we had to do a lot of retrofitting to make it functional again. So, I mean, that's definitely a possibility, but might want to keep it in use to keep it functional.
Or the best use might be selling it and thinking about something else that's a benefit in the future.
Because it did take like the entire Parks and Rec department about 3 weeks to set it up, and I'm wondering if that's the best use of their time.
That seems like that's not a great use of their time. Like if we need to get rid of it and then just use, temporary Johns for whatever, Bob's Johns or whomever we use for porta potties, and just have them bring them up, and then they deal with them, they put them up, take them down and empty them, and our people are freed up to do other stuff. I think that might be my vote, but 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks with our entire staff working on something is like a bathroom trailer specifically seems like too much.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's kind of why I was pushing towards maybe selling it either back to the manufacturer or somewhere local in town where we could help them set it up, and then it would be that responsibility. So. Okay. All right, thanks for those thoughts. Moving on to the increase in town board stipends. So this was a question in our retreat as well. And I'll be honest, when I look at the numbers of when you look at what we said in our retreat, it was very split on, some people said, yes, let's increase them, let's look at an hourly rate, let's increase a little bit, let's not increase. So I'm just trying to kind of gauge if this is something that you would like me to move forward with. I have done some preliminary studies on like what others get paid, and it is all over the board. Some people get paid hourly, some people get paid per meeting, some people get paid monthly, or some council members, I should say. So it is really all over the board on what works for that municipality and what you all would think would be a fair amount for an elected official.
I think my question on this policy wise is, how this goes into effect. Again, it's sort of like the current town board setting the payment for the current town board, right? And so I guess my question is like, is this something that could be done for the future as opposed to the optics of like, well, we don't think we should get paid more, so we're gonna get paid more. So how does this policy wise play out?
So if we were to get an increase, a lot of that would start next year with new trustees coming in. Those that voted on it currently, wouldn't see that increase until, well, they wouldn't see that.
Yeah.
Until the election.
That's
And if they were re-elected, then they would see that increase.
Yeah.
But if they, like, so for example, if you and Tyler, because you guys are the only ones that would be staying on the board, wouldn't see that increase until the next election,
Sure.
that you guys were up for election, basically.
That makes sense. I think that.
So you might have colleagues that are making. And is this something that you guys would like me to pursue more, kind of give you a breakdown of different?
I think for me,
Structure
the
or-
trick with this is like thinking to the future. I see being able to pay town board members more as kind of important for diversity in the board, right? Like, right now, if you're paid a small amount and you have a certain time commitment, that really precludes a whole variety of people who just don't have the financial ability to really volunteer that level of effort or that time for the compensation. And so the composition of the board is not necessarily representative of all the folks we have, because it turns out to be just those folks who really can afford that amount of time for that level of pay. So I have kind of mixed feelings about it for kind of how we recruit folks to serve in this capacity in the future and who's able to, based on the compensation.
Yeah, I totally agree with Dana, and this is one of the things that I also said in the board retreat. I mean, I understand that it's, you know, I think it's part of our civic duty, but it's also important that the amount of time you put in, you know, there is some sort of pay commensurate with that. And I don't think currently it's very fair. And again, there's going to be plenty of people that just, you know, if they have the option of working at their regular job and being paid what they get paid there, or coming and doing this job for, you know, dollars an hour, they're not going to. So I'm not sure the best way to come up with a formula for what that increase should be. I'm sorry that there aren't other towns that have more of a standardized process for this that we just can't steal from. But yeah, I do think that it needs to go up.
Yeah,
I agree. It needs to go up. I think we've discussed this.
yeah.
I think I've also heard a good bit of that feedback from community members, so I don't think, again, knowing that it's not like we all get to do this for ourselves, that there's processes in place where we're planning for this for the future, for future boards, for future recruitment of folks to serve. I think help eases some of the challenges, but I just heard a kind of pretty common theme around this issue, so I don't anticipate it being super controversial.
Okay, so it sounds like if I came up with, some of our neighboring community formulas on how to compensate elected officials, maybe we could sit through that and see, what might work for our budget for 2024. Does that work? Okay. And then next one is setting a limit for nonprofit requests. Currently in the budget that was published in our packet, I have $50,000 as the max, and then I've also budgeted for, I think it was a $10,000 contingency of like random requests for the next year. And are you all comfortable with that budget?
Mhm.
Okay. Alright. And unfortunately, it wasn't in the paper last week, but I'll make sure they get it in this week, that our nonprofit requests are open, and if we can get the word out. I haven't received any applications yet, but if it's anything like the last previous years, it's usually the week of the deadline.
What's the deadline again?
I want to say it's the 11th of October. Yeah. All right, and then going into the refuse fund sustainability, one thing that I did not include in this budget was, I haven't had time yet, but as soon as I do, I want to break out what it costs to dump for each facility, add that to our general fund now. So our general fund will now capture those disposal costs, and they won't be included in the actual refuse fund. So the town will be paying for its own disposal costs rather than it being supplemented by what we are charging our residents and our businesses. So once we break those out, that might help with our general sustainability of the fund. But at some point, we are going to need to talk about some rate increases of something Melina and Bill have been working on. With the current changeover, it's gotten a little delayed. So I hope to bring that to you all before the end of the budget season. We are finishing up a rate study with the wastewater and water treatment. And I would like to do those all comprehensively together. If utility rates are going to go up, how does that look with the refuse, with the water and the wastewater? So as soon as we receive that information back, and unfortunately, we were hoping to get it by the end of this month. And it looks like it's going to go out a little longer just because of the amount that they're requesting from us and the time that we have to spend on it at this point.
For the rate study.
Yeah, for the rate study. So our goal is to, have all these rates hopefully figured out by January 31st. So something could go into effect at the beginning-ish of the year. And that's kind of our internal goal, so.
But
Now it's our external goal, because I said it on.
you don't anticipate that with changing the charging by facility, so the town is paying for the refuse in the right category. That won't account for all of the difference in sustainability, but.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I just think it's fair to separate that out since we haven't. There are line items in our budget that I've discovered that were a disposal fee for each facility, so I'm wondering why those went away. So we're looking through that right now. And another thing that we're looking at is how we charge for administrative fees. Because currently, and I don't think I put this on there, but it is a part of this refuse fund sustainability and water and wastewater rate increases and sustainability, because if you look at our admin fees for water and wastewater administration fees. So what we charge our enterprise accounts that are supposed to be acting as business accounts, we charge them a percentage of our personnel that's used in each account. So for the water, we charge a percentage of my time, of Melina's time, of John's time, and we come up and we come up with this number that's increased over the years because now we've increased our pay rates.
Right.
And what I found is that we're charging the water fund an administration fee that is equivalent to the amount we actually generate in the water. So that's really not sustainable moving
Yeah.
forward. At the same time, so last year, our administration fees for all the funds was about $700,000. That went back into our general fund. And that's based off of this percentage. Now, in our rate studies, we're looking at administration fees and the fair way to do it. Some other municipalities, they charge a flat percentage of the revenue generated in each fund.
It's not going up, kind of. a-
Right, so like, as I increase salaries, it's not gonna go up a ton, but is that fair in the scheme of things? Because you wanna treat these funds as a separate business, and you wanna make sure that all the costs associated with that business is being covered and, being charged appropriately.
Right, if those if that staff time is, some of that staff time is being allocated to wastewater treatment related issues, that fund should be charged accordingly for that time.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. So this is another, these are all head scratchers, sorry, first thing Monday morning, and I'm just gonna give you a ton of like, I don't know the answer, but we're working on this. And that's one thing to keep in mind as we look at the sustainability of our water, wastewater, and refuse funds, is that administration, fee that we are charging each of those and how it's gone up from, $500,000 to $7, and then if we have increases at all, it's gonna keep going up, and how to manage that and have sustainability in those funds. Because if we're charging the same amount that we're making, we're not getting anywhere in either of those funds, and those funds need to be growing, they need to be accommodating, capital growth, really. So. Stuff.
So your point was that you're kind of looking at how other municipalities handle this.
Yeah, and we're evaluating in our rate studies. as well.
Yeah.
So in the water and sewer rate studies, they'll be giving us kind of a recommendation on how to do our administration fees moving forward.
Yeah.
I know that Mark Garcia did the administration fees here for the town, and we've been using the same ones since he was here. And I want to say that was. Then do you remember when Mark was here? I don't remember the date, but it's been a while. And maybe reevaluating how we do those administration
Yeah.
fees. Now that puts less money into our coffers for the general funds, so thinking about that, but also we want these other funds to be sustainable. So I'm really just talking through all these issues that come up. And there's no good solution yet, but I want you all to be aware, this, all these kind of facts as we go into the budget. And then, here's when, I'll wait until Melina comes back for the code violation tickets, because she's able to talk through that one. The next one would be a cemetery fence, and if we wanted that or not, we didn't get anywhere this year with our cemetery committee. I'm hoping a new facility parks and rec director will be able to help facilitate that a little better. But right now I haven't budgeted for anything to be expended from the cemetery fund at this point, because I don't really have any direction for it. We do have like 60,000 in that fund right now, and what that could be used for in the future, I don't think it would cover a whole new fence around there. I think that would be a lot more money, but just kind of wanted to prep you all for that for the future.
And did we, I'm sorry, I thought we hadn't even made a decision as to whether or not we were going to put the fence back and that's why the cemetery board was created.
Right,
Okay, yeah, just
we haven't made that.
double
decision.
checking my memory.
You are very correct. The code violation tickets, reported to the town. We are still receiving lots of, tickets that do not have any way to contact the person that the ticket was made from. We don't have any way to collect the funds that they owe us. So we've had an issue with this. The sheriff did change the code numbers on his tickets, so they do match as far as like I think the biggest problem too is the snow removal didn't match our code, so when our ticket was written, since it didn't match our codes, it would be dismissed automatically. We're still having issues generating any kind of revenue from our, with our current contract with our sheriff, in terms of getting those to be written to the town and then actually being able to follow up and collect on those. So Melina, I don't know where she went, but she's been working on that, and that's something I do want to kind of renegotiate in a new contract with the sheriff's department, is thinking about how to actually, you know, I mean, that's one of our biggest expenditures right now is law enforcement, and that's usually okay. Like we do, like a big expenditure should be law enforcement, but at the same time, we should be able to cover some of our costs with that, and we're currently nowhere close. If you see like in our actuals from our fines and fees, if you look at our revenue, it's really low. I mean, I think we're at like 14,000. Last year's, or that was 2021 was 14,000. Last year's is down to 8,000. So it's really discerning, or like I would expect that to be like at least 20,000. Especially when I see the stack of tickets that we couldn't even collect on.
Right, well, and we're allocating funds for the administration of those tickets without the ability to fund the administration of those tickets.
Correct. Correct. So that's something I would love to bring up, in my contract negotiations, moving forward.
Are we sure there's people have just stopped breaking the law?
Oh, yeah.
Also, did we see a decrease because OHVs aren't allowed in town, and so there was less citations given to OHVs driving off the route?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that could be part of it too. I'm talking about the tickets with, the sheriff. Yes. And how many would you say this year that we haven't been able to collect?
Oh, probably about 75% of them.
75%.
There's quite a few tickets that have been written and people are just, they're not paying them.
And then sometimes we can't get a hold of the people because there's no other.
Well, there's the only information, so the small tickets that were brought from the sheriff, all they have on them are vehicle model and license plate number. There's no phone number, there's no name, there's no mailing address, and so I think a lot of people come into town, look at the ticket, they see that and they go, oh, okay, and they just, I think they just go.
And through that, there's no way for us to bill them.
Right, there's no way for us to actually get in touch with them and say, hey, you owe us, yeah, this ticket, right? The bigger tickets that they bring us, which are different kinds of violations, like for aggressive dog, there are certain ones that they bring us, and those tickets have contact information, mailing address, but the general tickets that we use for parking too close to a fire hydrant or an OG in town, which sometimes they use the larger tickets for that. I'm not sure what delineates which ticket they decide to use. Or parking in a handicap zone, those are all tickets that don't have any contact information, so we can't actually find the people that get those tickets.
I mean, have we had any ability to brainstorm or work session with the sheriff's department? Because probably, right, I mean, the sheriff's writing a ticket, they just have the license plate, that's all they're going off of right there, and they're standing there, and so brainstorming kind of ideas, but yeah, it seems like that can happen to contract negotiations.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's a way, but currently, like, I don't have any way to actually find
Look that up, yeah.
somebody if they just don't ever pay it.
Right. All right, so those are some of the policy discussions, and I might take a couple out for Monday's meeting, sounding like that, just getting based off your all's feedback. And then moving down to, we've got the new positions that we've proposed. I'm skipping the water wastewater rate increase because I kind of talked about that with refuse, and anyone has any ideas for more revenue generators, let me know. One idea that I will still keep throwing out there, and we do have a general election next year in November, is thinking about potentially raising the marijuana sales tax. It is currently 1%. Neighboring communities are 5 to 10%. So considering we will have 3 retailers in town, that wouldn't be a huge increase, but it would give us maybe 15 to 20,000, possibly 30,000 more if we went up. And that's 15 is thinking about if we raised it to like 3%. But there's opportunities there to increase that if needed. That's one I've been thinking about for a while now.
Have we ever opened the discussion around some of our other fees? Obviously we have our sales tax fee, our sales tax, but thinking about our lodging fee, I mean, again, I don't even have a context for where that sits compared to other communities or other tourism oriented communities. And I know that being in on the chamber board meetings, cost of lodging is definitely a factor for like how tourism plays out, and people have seen a decrease in hotel booking because of the lodging price. But just a question on if lodging fees are an option.
And so the fee is on top of the tax as well, so just keeping that in mind that we
had both.
have, some people do not have both, but yeah, that's definitely something to look into.
Well, and even if we thought about it in the context of allocating that money to workforce housing, or, finding it so that it's kind of a win for some of our businesses, or at least a support, right? That it can be put towards things that reinvest in our local economy. I don't know, just something that comes to mind.
And I would say right now, a lot of our positions are currently just covered under the general fund, the general sales tax that we receive.
Yeah.
So that's very volatile and can change. If we have a bad year, it's a dangerous place to be, because then we would potentially have layoffs. So that's why I would love to have more stable revenue generators. Although I have been talking to people and experts thinking that, this maybe is our new where we're at these days. So I am comfortable presenting these new positions, but again, that's going to take away from some of our projects, because it's all being funded through the same funding mechanism. And if we do want bigger projects in the future, I would suggest us thinking about how to fund those.
Well, and back to kind of the sales tax discussion, I think it's fair to say that our local economy is seeing growth in general. But to your point, that is volatile as far as what happens with tourism in the future. And it is a positive for the town that online sales tax revenues may become an increasing share of our overall revenues, right? Like that's a diversification of revenue sources. But even that, online spending is still dependent on inflation, recession, other larger things that happen in our economy. So what else? What are the other options for revenue generation? I mean, what's on the table? Let's not. But I don't know what else is out there that's not totally dependent on sales tax and our tourist-based economy. Do you have any great ideas?
Are you asking me, or are you asking the
You.
group in
Well,
general?
you specifically and our group in general. Anybody have secret pots of money we can go tap into?
And that's one thing that I'm researching right now and wanting to kind of put out there for you. And each idea is very political. So if like proposing something like, paid parking and stuff like that has huge implications either way.
Well, and also maybe something down the road, right? As the communication grows. To me, this may be kind of funny and it is dependent, but to me, the federal spending on like grants is one of our biggest opportunities right now, right? And that's not sustainable, that's not gonna happen in perpetuity, but we are at a unique point in history for accessing those funds, and town staff has been, I mean, remarkable and amazing at accessing some of those funds. So to me, that just keeps standing out as plugging away at telling our story, making the case, writing the grants, staffing the grants for some of these once in a lifetime opportunities, but that's not long-term sustainability of our economy here.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll be getting some of these projects knocked off our list, but yeah, not sustainable in the future. I don't know, did I update you guys in the Friday update that the Department of Transportation decided to accept our safety action plan and we are still in the running for our Blair Street fund?
That's exciting.
Literally the day after the meeting. So,
Good job.
I mean, after we were like, okay, I guess that's it, because they were like, you have to pull your application, and we said, okay. And then they came back to us and said that it actually works, so. Okay, so then anticipating some increases moving forward, I kind of went over the new positions proposed. And looking at new increases, cost of living, I'm proposing a 1.5% increase. In Colorado, the COLA was announced at 3% to 5% increase. When I did that in our budget, it didn't quite pencil out, so I went down to 1.5, and that looked really good for our budget. Are you all comfortable with 1.5% increase? Okay. The Kendall building repair and maintenance, so this is where I wanted to point out that 175 went towards that. When we do get our new Parks Recs facility director here, one thing I've asked for is I will be asking for is a facility and Parks and Rec, like capital improvements plan moving forward, so we can really plan for these. I know the Kendall roof is in need of repair, and that might come sooner rather than later, just on urgency, but knowing that that is coming up in the future. We did budget that 175,000 for the deck, as well. Our health and life and dental went up 5%. We did receive a grant. I can take off the town hall equipment because it was actually, Melina just received a grant, actually. Congratulations.
Super grant.
Yeah, so our COSIPA, which is our information and technology, and we are going to have owls in each facility now, as well as the ability to cast those and all of the audio stuff. That was really exciting to get that. I boosted up my training budget. This year I received personnel coaching, not personnel coaching, professional coaching, and really helped me get through the year. I paid for that out of my pocket. I would like to try and get that, because it was so beneficial, I wanted to try and get that in our budget this year. But I tried it myself, and it really helped me through a lot. And having that person to kind of help guide me through a lot of these issues. I want to be here for the long term. And so that's why I increased that budget line.
That's a neat one.
And then community development coordinator promoted to community development director. So I think I alluded to that earlier. I also increased the town board training. Since we will have a new board next year, I really wanted to focus in on some training opportunities for the new board and set them up for success. And then there is some inflation on some items, including gas, propane, gravel has gone up, just some random items that have increased over the last couple of years. cleaning has gone up as well, so. All right. I think a lot of these things I have covered, in our general discussion. The one thing I didn't cover was that we're gonna have a 150th anniversary this year. So there'll be events around that, big celebration for the town, similar to kind of what you saw at the Lucy Park, getting the whole community together. And this might be a great area where we collaborate with the, creative district again on facilitating that. And then, so as far as like big projects next year, brownfield grants, affordable housing, wastewater treatment plant collection system upgrade, Kendall patio completion, code rewrite, development standards update, and perimeter trail construction. It's a busy year next year. I would suggest if there's any other projects that the board wants to prioritize, we would have to take something else off our list. And then needs are pretty self-explanatory. The nonprofit versus partners, I know we've talked about that in the past. So I've separated out the partners. Basically, anyone who has a memorandum of understanding, not a, or a contract with like Region 9, Salem Development Association, Silverton Area Chamber of Commerce, Creative District, Student Center, and Silverton School District. I'm not asking them to go through the nonprofit ask to confuse things. I will ask them to do a separate presentation to you all with their requests. Except for Region 9, they submitted their $1,600. I built that into the budget already. And then we'll review our contracts as well. I'll try and get those together for one of our budget. I don't know if it's going to happen by Monday, but Mullis we've already renewed at our last meeting. So trying to knock those out so that they're not all done in January. And I did include some graphs at the end here, thinking about our spending. I would not feel comfortable with us going over that 5 million spending. Now a lot of that, like $1 million of that is grants that we're planning on spending.
And those are already
awarded.
awarded. Yeah.
So now we just have to spend the money. And yeah, that's the end of my memo there. Any questions? Any other concerns on the budget or where we're headed or some of my suggestions? I didn't go line by line this time. I just want kind of a broader overview. Do you like it this format? Do you want to go line by line? We can do that next time if needed. I wanted to talk through that.
I prefer this style.
I think I like that you have the line by line items there, so for transparency's sake, anybody can see them, they're there, people can look at the actual numbers. But I think how we facilitated this was really helpful.
And probably with the new finance committee next year, I'll probably go line by line again and kind of start over that process, explaining each one, but I feel like this one, you guys have been around for a hot minute, so I didn't have to explain like how much we mill off of our property tax and stuff like that. And that property tax increase is subject to potential legislation. So right now, it looks like we're gonna get almost $100,000 more. I mean, we only get a very small mill of the property tax that was new assessments. It looks like we would get maybe $100,000 more, but that's really up in the air. We don't get a lot out of property tax. All right. Well, thanks team. Appreciate all your thoughts, and it really helps me to like talk through it all as I move forward and put something together for the entire board on Monday. Next Monday. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful Okay, thank you.
Thank-
Sean. And
Thank you very
we're
much, Gloria.
10:17. Take care.
Bye.